Welcome to the Rude Dog Show. This is Rudy Reyes. And if you don't know me by now, go to therudedogshow.com. There's a ton of body of work with 6 years plus worth of dialogue, interviews, conversations. And no conversation could be any better than what I'm about to have right now with with the Angels color analyst, won a championship ring, two-time All-Star champion, played with the Royals as well as the Angels. Welcome, the one and only opposite of Victor Rojas, Mark Gubicza. Mark, thanks, man, for coming on.
You got it, Rudy. How's it going, my man?
It is going. It's rocking and rolling. You know, sports is starting to rock and roll in of itself. And, of course, you're in the SoCal area. I want to talk about the Angels here for half a minute, only because Mike Trout's been kind of in the news like most other players, deciding whether or not they want to opt out or they want to play for the 60-game plus. I guess that would include the playoff season, the upcoming season. What are your thoughts about Mike Trout being on the fifth? I mean, look, he's been around a long time. The guy's one of the highest paid guys in Major League Baseball, one of the best guys to play in Major League Baseball, in my opinion, based on dialogue and conversations I've heard from him. Where does he stand?
I think, Rudy, when you go back to that statement by Trouty, and I think what he's done, even from the get-go, from a number of different issues, he's really stepped forward and has become more of a leader, not only for the team but for Major League Baseball itself. That was the concern going into summer camp. His wife is pregnant. Jess is due in early part of August, and you don't want to take that chance as a father, as a husband, to do something that may harm not only your wife but your child as well. So that was concerns coming into summer camp. But I think he's noticing over time how the protocols of MLB. I mean, there's been some ups and downs, which it's understandable. It's uncharted water, but they've done a great job as far as trying to clean things up as quick as possible and make it as safe as possible. And I think what he's seeing is now, going into summer camp a little bit different. What he's seeing now is the players are really bit into this. And Andrew Heaney, their player rep, came out and said, listen, we know the MLB protocols, but we're going to set our own protocols as well, as far as, hey, we're not going to have gatherings at restaurants or anywhere else. Limit the amount of people you see both at the field and off the field. That's the most important thing, off the field, whether you're at home now and see summer camps, but when you go and the season starts, on the road. So it's going to be really condensed, and I think the guys have bit into that, and that's why I think he's feeling more and more comfortable each day. He finally hit his first home run yesterday in summer camp. Shohei Ohtani did the same. They're a pretty good team, the Angels, going. When you look at their lineup 1 through 9, it's about as deep as any team in all of Major League Baseball, especially even the American League as well. But I think the comfort zone is getting a little bit better for Trouty as we go along, and hopefully that continues for him and for the Angels.
Yeah, I hope so as well. When I look at the upcoming games that they have on their schedule, Oakland 24, obviously they're going to have a quadfecta, as I like to call it, from the 24th through the 27th. And of course, playing against Seattle in a homestand, and then take on Houston, and then going to Seattle to play. I look at the upcoming schedule. I look at a lot of wins for this team, and of course, I'm not going to say that any team is out of any postseason conversation, even though it is a truncated season. But I look at Seattle being a very difficult opponent. Out of those three opponents, who do you think they can get 2 out of 3 from?
Well, Rudy, what I can go back to is what even the last season, for instance, Seattle didn't have a real good year, but when you look what they did in their first 30 games, I think they were 21-9. Now, when you're 21-9 in a 60-game schedule, you can just tread water the rest of the year, and you're going to make the playoffs. Now, Oakland, on the other hand, they won 97 games last year, but they got off to a slow start. Even you go back the last 2 years, slow starts for Oakland as well. So there's a lot of things going into play. The Angels, as far as their pitching staff, that was something they tried to address during the offseason. They bring in Dylan Bundy and Julio Teheran, who looks like he's finally coming into camp. That's, over 60-game schedule, I think their pitching staff is fine, starting staff. Shohei Ohtani's throwing the ball right now, and he's going to be their ace of their staff. Over 162 games, maybe it's a little different, but the short, condensed schedule, I think every team has a shot. There's some teams you always admit, you think, all right, they're going to be great, the Dodgers, the Yankees, teams like that. But there's no guarantee that if you're not healthy and the guys don't stay on the field, it doesn't matter who you are. It's going to go down to depth as far as your 60-man roster they're going to have, that squad they got going, the Texas squad, and how they're able to stay healthy and stay within their protocol and keep people on the field. I think the Angels right now are set up really, really well to make not only get over, I think it's going to take probably, I want to say 37, 38 wins, probably right around that area to get to the postseason. I think they're set up pretty good for that at this moment, but health is going to be a big issue.
Yeah, I think health overall is going to be huge. Now, what I really put into contrast is when you look at this shortened season, very truncated season, I might add, you're going to have different scenarios where, over, let's just say 120 games or somewhere in that relative nature where you have to go out and win 80 games. You have to go out and win 90 games. You have to do all these things. You don't really have to do all of that. So the pressure, A, is kind of off of your shoulders. Secondly, injuries are also minimized because you're not going to have the ability to overextend yourself because of the depth of the roster. To go to your point, I think Angels have a solid depth perspective in regards to pitching and hitting and guys in the infield and so on and so forth. Obviously, there have been some rules, changed and modified to fit accordingly. How are the Angels managing to stay in their own bubble during this crisis? And what are your thought process in regards to other players throughout Major League Baseball who are already well-defined, like Ryan Zimmerman and other players who just find a way to say, you know what, I'm good. I don't think I want to play.
Yeah, and even go back to normally on a 162-game schedule, this has always been baseball forever. You're going to win 60, you're going to lose 60. What you do those other 42 determines if you're making the postseason. Well, now, if you go to that same thought process, you're going to win 20, you're going to lose 20. What you're going to do in those other 20 will determine if you get to the postseason. Depth as far as pitching staff, they got 7 or 8 starters are going to go with a 6-man rotation, the Angels. So they're deep there. They have some really good, exciting young players in their farm system, including a guy like Joe Adell, who's a great baseball player, who's got a chance to be a star. So that he's waiting in the wings, a few other guys that are there to give them depth. And, and then we go to the question as far as people opting out for the season. I will never question anybody's decision to do that. It's always going to come down to what they feel themselves and their family. If you make that decision, I'm totally fine with that. But I'm seeing more and more baseball players at this moment. Now, things could change. We're still a week away from those real scrimmage games in the summer camp. Now they're all inter-squad. If everything stays the course and the testing remains very, very low as far as positive testing in Major League Baseball and staying within that so-called bubble. You have the bubble down there in Orlando for the NBA, so they're all in one area. Now, MLB is around different cities, so it's really up to your leaders or your team. I mean, when you look at the Angels, they have Anthony Rendon, they have Mike Trout, they have Anderson Simmons, they have Albert Pujols and Andrew Heaney. All those guys are going to keep everybody in place, and they're going to tell them that and Joe Maddon said the same thing, which I think is probably the greatest signing I've seen from the Angels in a long, long time. Joe Maddon as a manager is the perfect guy in this scenario where he's so positive. He said, this is a time where we're all teammates. In other words, we got to all be the best teammate ever. And that means taking care of yourself and your teammates and your family and everyone around your group of family. So that's what I like about Joe, and I think he's going to really help this team. I'm going back to that. Joe Maddon is going to be the key to the success of this team. And he has always been successful. Whether he was a bench coach for the Angels, they won the World Series. He took the Rays to the World Series, a team that never won before. I mean, they're talking 90 to 100 losses every year. And he won with the Cubs, who took forever to win a World Series. So he's a winner. He's a positive guy. In a world we live in right now, positivity can go a long, long way.
It definitely does. Not only that, but using common sense, making sure you're following protocols, making sure you're sanitizing your hands, washing your hands. And if you see signs of somebody actually working, regardless whether in your clubhouse or in another clubhouse or what have you, just use common sense. And I think that we can all use a dose of that every single day. Of course, Mark Gubicza joins me here. I'm Rudy Reyes on the RudDogShow.com for a little bit longer. You're talking about Joe Maddon, and I've always had a fond appreciation for Joe Maddon, no matter what he's done or where he's been, as you mentioned. What did it take for them to form this separation from one of the best back catchers in Mike Scioscia from being the head coach? What did it really take for them to recognize that Joe Maddon would be the guy to be the skipper for the Angels?
Well, I know Artie Moreno's always had a real close relationship with Joe. And when it looked like, the Chicago Cubs were going to go a different direction, and he had a lot of success there. The players loved him. They even had a pretty good season last year in Chicago. When he became available, I mean, he's been part of the Angel family forever, 30-plus years in the system, whether in the minor leagues or at the major league level. So he's been an Angel for a long, long time. So when Joe became available, I think, even though I had a great relationship with Brad Auspis, I think under the circumstances in the tough season last year, when you lose a player like Tyler Skaggs and have to deal with that the entire, from July on, even though they had a good little run there, but still, and other injuries, that when Joe became available, I thought Artie made that decision right away. And I think that's the right decision because, like I said, he's a part of the family. And when you're going through what they went through last year, bringing in a family member, a guy that can really get into the mind of every single player to listen, we can be a great team, but we also got to be friends and brothers. And that's what we have to be. And I think that's what he's preached forever, wherever he's been. I mean, he's always had these, things you go and walk in the locker room, they have these little sayings every day. It's all positivity that it can go a long, long way, especially what they went through last year and then bringing into this season and dealing with what we're dealing around the country and the world now.
Well, I think his mindset is going to be one of those keys to the puzzle, being the key that kind of unlocks all these guys' potential. What are the biggest challenges for the Angels moving forward when we're talking about depth? We're talking about, obviously, 60 games helps immensely, regardless of what Major League Baseball organization you're a part of. But where do we see the Angels sitting? Do they make postseason based on all those parameters from depth to rotation to outfield to having all those right components, especially with Joe Maddon as skipper?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things that have. I mean, Justin Upton's got to be the player that we all expect him to be. I think he's going to have a bounce back season. Anthony Rendon is arguably one of the best players in baseball. A very quiet guy, but a great leader, and he's going to show a lot of guys from Mike Trout on through how to slow the game down in those big moments. I mean, the guy has no pulse, really, in those big moments. We saw that last year in the playoffs and World Series. He slows the game down as well as anybody I've ever seen. Great defender there, third. I mean, that left side of the infield with him and Anderson Simmons at shortstop, anything hit on the ground's an out. So, I mean, I think their depth is good. I still feel they're really strong as far as their starting rotation in a short, condensed season. Middle relieving and the back end of their bullpen is going to be important because when you're playing 60 games in 65 days, you better have some depth in your bullpen, especially that closer role. Well, they have Hansel Robles, who was great last year, career high 23 saves. Ty Buttry's got a closer mentality. Keenan Middleton has a closer mentality. So they have potential 3 guys that can step in at any moment and close games. Middle relieving is going to be very important. You need some guys that come in and get some swing and misses, especially if you have an extra inning game. That guy starts at second base with no outs. Well, you need a strikeout there. And they have a number of guys that throw upper 90s but great secondary pitches. So that's where their depth is going to come into play. And any one of those guys, if they're not in the rotation, whether it's Felix Pena, who was part of that magical no-hitter last year, it was solid. Maybe he's down in the bullpen now as a middle guy. We just don't know. Jaime Barria, who may be a starter, who may be down in the bullpen. There is some really good depth there. The guys that give them some innings because early on the starters are going to go 4 or 5, maybe 6 innings, probably not even that much. So the first 3 or 4 starts. So depth in your middle guys down there is going to be important. That's where I think they're really strong.
Well, I do as well. One thing I always wonder about Joe Maddon is the fact that he makes the right calls for the right pitchers. And, of course, you have the other team in Los Angeles, not named the Angels, who seems to almost to a point, and all credit to Dave Roberts. I think more importantly, it's about making the right call with the right guy, putting him in the right position to win. And I've always seen Joe Maddon do this properly and do it functionally to where he knows when to say when. He knows when to pull guys. He knows when there's enough left in the tank. And these guys obviously would have to exhibit that for him to make that judgment call. Do you foresee him maybe giving one of those starters the ability to kind of push beyond a 6th inning if for some reason he gets that last strikeout, or does he just pull the plug and call the next guy in?
Well, even in a conversation at his presser we had, this year when he was first announced, he said he's not he believes in the analytics and the sabermetrics, and we all believe in that, but he also believes in the heart. And if he feels that somebody's still throwing well that 3rd time through the lineup, going into the 4th time through the lineup, he's not going to make a change just for the sake of making a change because the numbers say you got to get him out of there. If he's throwing well, he's going to be in there. So a guy like Andrew Heaney might get some get a few extra pitches. They're still probably be fairly cautious with Shohei Ohtani coming back from that Tommy John surgery he had about 2 years ago now. And he's in the process of coming back last year, and then he had the knee injury. So he'll be fine, but they're going to keep at it. You got 60 games, 10 starts apiece. I go back to what Shohei Ohtani did 2 years ago when he was Rookie of the Year. He was 4-2 with a low 3 ERA with a strikeout, a little over strikeout per inning. You know, it would be stretched out over 9 innings. 10 starts he'll get this year. 10 starts last time. He has a chance, a legit chances. Trouty's going to be always an MVP candidate. Shohei Ohtani at this moment, I think, is a real good chance to be an MVP. Imagine winning 3 or 4 games, hitting 12, 15 home runs. If that's not an MVP who does everything, well, then that's what you're going to see in Shohei Ohtani.
Yeah, big time. I've always appreciated Ohtani when he won that MVP, when he won that rookie award. I was just kind of thinking to myself, this guy is a utility player, he's a utility pitcher. He's got some mean stuff, and he can also slide that in when you least expect it, especially when you're talking about the outside to the inside, getting batters to really swing when they probably shouldn't be, and he gets them without, looking. So you're talking about a KO, right there off the bat. Mark Gubicza joins me here on the Rude Dog Show. Always a pleasure always pleasure meeting Mark. I met him up in the booth at Angel Stadium a few years ago. A lot of things have changed, and clearly we continue to see change across the Major League Baseball landscape. Last question for you, Mark, when we're talking about what Rob Manfred had done, getting Clark beyond just a text message, beyond just an email, being able to sit down and really go to the nuts and bolts, get to the meat and potatoes of how this Major League Baseball season will actually look like. What was the starting point? I mean, what was the actual component to help kind of pull this all together to make this season actually work? And do you foresee it continuing despite some recent COVID uncoverings, if you will?
Yeah, I think both of them realized, and I've known Tony for a long, long time, and Commissioner Manfred, I've known him now for a number of years as well. They realized, how many players wanted to play, and then the owners wanted to have the players play. And I think when you get together, I think having that face-to-face meeting like you had in Arizona was important, because all those times whether you're on a Zoom cast or on a telephone conference call, you always want to read somebody's eyes. And I feel when you're in person, it's a little bit easier to do so. Is it a perfect scenario for everybody? No. But the old saying is baseball was always considered a marathon. It's not a sprint. Well, this year it's a sprint. And I think it's going to be really cool because every single game from the first game on is so important. It's a playoff game. Joe Maddon said it again the other day. That first game, is a playoff game. He can't afford to get off to a slow start. It's too hard to recover in a 60-game schedule. So every game is a playoff game.
Yeah, and I believe so. It's not how you start, it's how you finish. And speaking of finishing, Mark, thank you so much for coming on to the show. Would love to have you back on again. I know you're going to have your hands full by the end of the month, but if you can fit that in, that would be fantastic. I'd love to have you back on.
Anytime, Rudy. It's a pleasure being on there with you, my friend.
Thanks. Thank you very much, and enjoy your week. And hopefully, Angel fans will not only tune in on their AM 8:30, but they'll be able to hopefully experience Angel baseball at home at Angel Stadium. So thank you so much.
You got it, Rudy. Have a good one, friend.
You too. Take care. Thank you. That was Mark Gubicza, joins me here on the Rude Dog Show. That was fantastic. I love having Mark on. It was great meeting him the first time around. Great talking to him again. But thanks for tuning in all things Major League Baseball, including Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. So thank you so much for tuning in. And I'll be talking with you guys again next Saturday. Don't forget, I'm going to have Fred Smoot, former cornerback for the Washington Redskins. He's going to be on this show as well, talking about all things Redskins, where they are, where they've been, and hopefully they'll have a name by the time we talk next time. Thanks again.